They say curiosity killed the cat. But in my case, it almost got me burned alive, right out in the middle of nowhere. It started subtly, just this low humming like a broken power line, echoing through the thick woods during my solo camping trip. I figured maybe it was just wind whistling through some weird rock formation, you know. I'd gone pretty deep into the Black Creek wilderness, further than the marked trails suggested, looking for that genuine, off-the-grid peace. But this sound. The air grew thick and heavy the closer I got, like breathing in wool. And hot, unseasonably hot for an autumn night deep in the woods. Ash, fine gray powder, started dusting the fallen leaves under my boots, which was bizarre. There hadn't been any wildfires reported for hundreds of miles. The chanting got louder, clearer, but still unintelligible. It was hypnotic, burrowing into my skull. I finally pushed through the last screen of branches and froze. It wasn't just a campfire. It was a gathering. Maybe a dozen figures, standing in a loose circle around a bonfire that burned with an unnatural intensity, the flames leaping far too high, crackling with that same weird, pulsing orange light. They weren't rowdy campers or kids having a party. They stood perfectly still, draped in simple, almost robe-like clothes of drab earth tones, browns, grays, dull greens. I should have left. Right then, I should have turned around and sprinted back the way I came, never mind the dark or getting lost. But one of them turned, slowly, deliberately. An older woman, her face deeply lined and pale, her eyes seeming too large in the flickering light. She didn't look surprised to see me, not at all. She just smiled. It wasn't a welcoming smile. It was thin-lipped, knowing, almost pitying. Then she raised a hand, beckoning me forward. As I got closer, drawn in against my will, I noticed more details about the people around the fire. Their skin, where it was visible beneath the drab robes, seemed stretched, almost papery thin over their bones. And some of them, mostly on their hands and faces, had these faint web-like patterns of scars, like old burns that hadn't healed quite right. They looked simultaneously frail and unnervingly strong. The woman who beckoned me, her name was Ilara. She told me later, finally spoke. Ilara gently guided me closer to the fire, her touch surprisingly cold despite the inferno raging just feet away. "He calls to those who carry the spark," she murmured, her eyes flickering towards the flames. "He offers refuge from the cold, empty world outside." Who was he? I risked a glance into the fire itself. It wasn't just wood burning. Deep within the impassable heart of the blaze, shapes seemed to coalesce and writhe. I tried to pull my arm away from Ilara's grip, mumbling about needing to find my way back, setting up camp. A weak excuse, I know, but panic was starting to claw its way up my throat. Her grip tightened instantly, surprisingly strong, her cold fingers digging into my arm. "Leaving?" she asked, her voice losing its soft rasp, gaining a sharp edge. "Why would you leave? You've only just arrived." The other figures stopped swaying. "He doesn't like uncertainty," Ilara hissed, her face inches from mine, her breath smelling faintly of ash and something else. "Decay. He offers a simple choice, acceptance or purification. Purification." I had a sickening feeling I knew what that meant. The way the fire leaped and writhed, the scars on their skin, the overwhelming heat. Purification meant burning. The figures around us started closing in, slowly, shuffling forward with deliberate steps, tightening the circle. "Join us," Ilara whispered, her voice like sandpaper. "Embrace the warmth. Become part of the light." Or, she didn't need to finish. She tilted her head slightly towards the roaring bonfire. The shapes within the flames writhed more violently now, coalescing slightly, taking on the vague impression of immense, burning limbs, indistinct but undeniably present. A low growl, like stone grinding against stone, rumbled from the heart of the fire, vibrating through the ground beneath my feet. Panic gave me a jolt of adrenaline. I shoved Ilara hard, harder than I thought I could. She stumbled back with a surprised gasp, her cold grip finally broken. For a split second, there was an opening in the circle. I didn't think, I just bolted, crashing back through the undergrowth, away from the fire, away from those terrible eyes. Branches whipped at my face, thorns tore at my jacket, but I didn't care. Behind me, I heard shouts, angry, guttural sounds, not quite human. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs felt like jelly. The sounds of pursuit seemed to fall behind, replaced by the frantic drumming of my own heart and the gasping of my breath. But the heat never faded. It was like I'd carried a piece of that unnatural fire with me, a phantom warmth radiating against my back. I stumbled into a small clearing, collapsing onto the damp earth, trying to catch my breath, trying to convince myself I'd escaped. But then I saw it. Coals. I scrambled back from the embers, heart pounding anew. Then, from the darkness between the trees surrounding the clearing, figures began to emerge. Not the cultists, not human at all. They were tall, impassably thin silhouettes made of what looked like charred wood and solidified shadow, glowing internally with that same sickening orange light, like embers packed into humanoid shapes. Their limbs were too long, jointed wrong, ending in sharp, splintered points. One of the charred figures stepped forward, extending a long, smoking limb towards me. It didn't try to grab me. Instead, its hand, a collection of smoldering twig-like protrusions, opened palm up. Resting in the center was a single, brightly pulsing ember, identical to the one scattered on the ground but radiating intense heat I could feel even from several feet away. There were no words, but the meaning was terrifyingly clear. The choice again. Join us or burn. I don't remember making a decision. I just remember the heat, the overwhelming sense of inevitability. It felt like my own skin was starting to smolder, like the air itself was catching fire around me. Maybe I reached out. Maybe I screamed. Maybe I just closed my eyes and waited. The next thing I recall clearly is waking up, alone, miles away from that clearing, near the edge of the Black Creek woods where my car was parked. It was morning. The sun was rising, casting long, normal shadows. But here's the thing. Ever since that night, I'm always cold. No matter how many layers I wear, no matter how high I crank the heating, there's this deep internal chill I just can't shake. Except sometimes. Sometimes when I'm alone, especially at night, I feel this flicker of warmth, not from outside, but from inside me. It starts in my chest, this tiny pulsing heat. And when I look down at my hands in the dark, sometimes. You know that feeling when you're just asterisk drifting off and a noise jolts you awake? That happened last night. But this wasn't the house settling or the pipes groaning. This was scratching right beneath me. A dry, skittering sound like long fingernails dragging slowly across rough wood. I froze, lying there in the dark, straining my ears. It stopped. Just dead silence, except for my own heart hammering against my ribs. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a mouse got into the walls again. I must have drifted off again, because the next time I heard it, it was louder. Scratch, scrape, drag. It wasn't random. It sounded like something was methodically testing the underside of the mattress springs, moving from one end to the other. Slower this time, more confident, my breath hitched. I stayed perfectly still, didn't even dare to shift my weight. The silence between the sounds was worse, filled with this awful anticipation. My bedroom door was closed, the windows locked. Okay, this was ridiculous. I'm a grown man. I pay bills, I have a job, I'm not scared of monsters under the bed. Except, I really was. I slowly, carefully reached out a hand towards the bedside lamp. My fingers trembled as they fumbled for the switch. The scratching stopped instantly. The silence was absolute, heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the switch. Turning on the light felt like acknowledging it. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, just silence. My ears were ringing from straining to hear anything, anything at all. No scratching, no movement. Maybe it was gone, maybe it really was just the house, or my imagination running wild in the dead of night. Relief started to trickle in, slow and cautious. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The tension in my shoulders eased slightly. I even managed a small, shaky chuckle at myself, scared by nothing. That was it. Forget rational thought, forget being brave. Pure terror shot through me like electricity. I scrambled backwards on the bed, pressing myself against the headboard, pulling my knees up to my chest. My eyes were wide, glued to the edge of the mattress, specifically the floor beneath the head of the bed where I heard the thump. My breathing was ragged, shallow. The room felt impossibly small, the shadows deeper, more menacing. Every tiny creak of the house sounded amplified, like a footstep. I stayed like that for ages, frozen against the headboard, scanning the floor. Nothing moved. But then, a smell started to creep into the air. Faint at first, then stronger. It was awful, like damp earth, rotting leaves and something else. Something sickly sweet and metallic like old blood. It wasn't coming from outside. It seemed to be wafting up from beneath the bed, thick and heavy. It coated the back of my throat, made my stomach churn. This wasn't a mouse. This wasn't the house settling. I couldn't take it anymore. The smell, the silence, the asterisk knowing asterisk something was right there. I had to look. I know, stupid. Every horror movie cliché, right? Don't look under the bed. But the not knowing was somehow worse. Slowly, inch by agonizing inch, I leaned over the side of the mattress. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I gripped the edge of the bed frame, my knuckles white. My head dipped lower, lower. My eyes adjusted to the deeper gloom under there. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was a hand. But God, not like any hand I'd ever seen. It looked thin, stretched, the color of bone bleached by the sun. The fingers were impossibly long, jointed wrong, ending in what looked less like fingernails and more like ragged, dark claws. They were curled slightly, resting against the dusty floorboards. As I watched, paralyzed, one of those horrifying fingers twitched, then slowly, deliberately tapped the floor. Tap, 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 just 3 times. My mind was racing. What was that thing? How did it get in? What did it want? Questions hammered at me, but no answers came, only more fear. I thought about my phone. It was on the nightstand, right by the lamp. Inches away from the edge, inches away from it. Could I reach it? Call someone? Who would even believe me? Yeah, hi, 911. There's a hand under my bed. They'd think I was drunk or crazy. No, calling wasn't an option yet. I needed to get out. Okay, plan. I needed a plan. Can't stay here, can't reach the phone safely. The door is the only way. I looked around the bed. Nothing heavy to throw, nothing to use as a weapon except the flimsy bedside lamp. Useless. My best bet was speed. Wait for a moment of silence, maybe it was resting or dormant again, then just leap. Bolt for the door as fast as humanly possible. Don't look back, don't hesitate. It sounded simple in my head, but my body refused to cooperate. I launched myself off the bed. My feet hit the cold floorboards, and for a split second, nothing happened. Relief flooded me, maybe I'd overreacted. Then I felt it. Something impossibly strong clamped around my left ankle. It wasn't just the hand I saw. It felt like multiple bony grips, cold and dry, digging into my skin like vices. I screamed, a raw, choked sound, and stumbled forward, hitting the floor hard. Pain shot up my leg, but the terror was worse. It was pulling me. Panic fueled strength I didn't know I had. I kicked wildly with my free leg, aiming back under the bed. I connected with something that felt yielding, but strangely brittle, like dry branches snapping. There was a high-pitched shriek, an inhuman sound that scraped the inside of my skull, and the grip on my ankle loosened just enough. I ripped my leg free, ignoring the searing pain, and scrambled frantically towards the door. I didn't dare look back. I leaned against the cool wood of the door, gasping for air, listening. Silence from the bedroom. Nothing, just the frantic pounding of my own heart. I slid down the door until I was sitting on the hallway floor, hugging my knees, staring at the bottom gap. My ankle throbbed where it had grabbed me. I gingerly pulled up my pajama leg. There were deep, red marks, already bruising, perfectly spaced like horrid fingers had dug into me. But that wasn't the worst part. I stayed out there all night, huddled against the door, too scared to move, too scared to sleep. Every creak of the house sent fresh waves of terror through me. When dawn finally broke, painting the hallway in pale, gray light, I felt exhausted, but maybe, just maybe, safer. Sunlight is supposed to banish monsters, right? Carefully, armed with a heavy flashlight and more courage than I actually felt, I unlocked the bedroom door and pushed it open slowly. The room looked normal, empty. I never slept in that room again. Sold the place not long after, couldn't stand being there. But here's the thing that really messes with me, the thing I can't explain. That shard I pulled from my ankle, I kept it. Don't ask me why. Morbid curiosity may be proof I wasn't crazy. I put it in a little glass jar on my new nightstand. And sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, I think I hear it. A tiny, faint scratching sound, coming from inside the jar. And last night... You ever wonder what happens in those places? You know, the ones boarded up tight, barbed wire curling over the fences like rusty thorns, signs half-rotted saying, "Keep out," or "Biohazard." I used to think it was just kids messing around, maybe homeless folks looking for shelter. But then I found the Kellerman Institute. Or maybe it found me. It started simple enough, dared by mates down the pub, fueled by cheap lager to just hop the fence. Just take a look. Inside the grounds, the silence was heavy, like a blanket smothered over the world. Usually, even abandoned places have some asterisk noise, Wind whistling, rats scurrying, maybe distant traffic. Here, nothing. Just this low, almost subaudible hum, like a giant machine left running somewhere deep underground. I found a side door, jammed but not locked. Probably steel once, now just rusted sheet metal. It groaned open like something ancient waking up. My phone's flashlight cut a pathetic little cone through the dark. First room looked like some kind of reception area maybe. Desk overturned, papers everywhere, plastered to the floor by grime and time. But the hum was louder here, and the air felt thick, damp. I moved deeper down a long corridor. Emergency lights flickered weakly overhead on the peeling ceiling tiles, casting long, dancing shadows that made me jump at every flicker. Rooms branched off to the sides, labs maybe. I found one steel door that wasn't bolted, just incredibly heavy. Took all my weight to shoulder it open a crack. The room beyond, it was different, colder. Power was definitely still on in here, faintly. Wires snaked across the floor, connected to a huge cylindrical tank in the center of the room. It was opaque, maybe frosted glass or stained metal, humming louder than anything else I'd heard. Pipes ran into and out of it, coated in condensation, some patched haphazardly with duct tape. On a table near the tank, buried under filth, was a binder, a logbook. Pages were stiff, stained with... Well, I didn't want to think about what stained them. Most entries were technical jargon, stuff I couldn't understand. Dates stretched back years. But then I saw the recent entries. Handwritten, messy, panicked. Stuff about uncontrolled cellular division, aggressive morphology, containment failure imminent. That's when I heard it. A noise from deeper inside the facility. Not the hum, this was wet. A slapping, dragging sound. Echoing down the corridor I'd just come from, it stopped. Then started again, closer. My blood went cold. Forget the dare, forget the photos I was supposed to take. I had to get out. Now, I turned, stumbling back towards the heavy door, pulling it shut behind me, trying not to slam it. The hinges screamed anyway. Silence again. But it wasn't empty silence. I backed away from the door, deeper into the lab with the tank. Heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted out. My eyes darted around, looking for another exit, anything. There wasn't one. Just the tank, the humming console, the grimy table with the logbook. The dragging sound stopped right outside the door. Then, scratching, long, slow scrapes against the steel. Like fingernails, impossibly long, impossibly hard, trying to find purchase, trying to get in. Then the handle started to turn, slowly, jerkily. Like something was fumbling with it, something that didn't quite understand how knobs worked but had incredible strength. It rattled, turned a little more, stopped. Then a huge bang hit the door, making the whole frame shake, rattling the lights. Dust rained down from the ceiling. Another bang, harder this time. The steel buckled slightly inward. This thing wasn't just strong, it was furious. The gurgling intensified into a low, wet roar. I scrambled backwards, phone flashlight shaking violently in my hand, beam dancing across the room. My back hit the cold metal of the tank. The humming intensified, vibrating through my spine. I looked wildly around. Pipes, the control panel, the logbook. Wait, the logbook mentioned aggressive morphology, uncontrolled division. I remembered a specific page, something about auditory sensitivity. Subject reacts violently to frequencies above 15 kHz. My phone, could I? Found one, a basic audio tone generator. Didn't know if it even worked properly. I cranked the frequency slider way up, max volume, prayed it was high enough. The door buckled again with a deafening crack. Metal splintered inwards. A shadow fell across the widening gap. I stabbed the play button on my phone screen just as something long, pale, and multi-jointed snaked through the opening near the floor. Silence. Blessed, horrible silence, broken only by the hum of the tank and my own ragged breathing. The high-pitched tone had stopped. Either the app crashed or my phone battery died, didn't care which. It was gone. Subject Alpha was gone for now. Didn't dare check the corridor. I just had to get out. Opposite side of the lab, partially hidden behind some fallen shelving, I spotted it, a ventilation grate. Large, old-fashioned type, big enough for a person if I could get the cover off. The ventilation shaft was tight, dark, and thick, with decades of dust and cobwebs that felt unnervingly like strands of hair against my skin. I crawled on my belly, using the dim light filtering from the lab behind me, then just feeling my way forward in near total blackness. The shaft branched, turned, sloped downwards. I could hear scurrying rats, I hoped. Prayed. Just kept crawling, putting distance between me and that lab, between me and subject Alpha. Finally ahead, a glimmer of lighter darkness. Another grate. This one looked out onto trees outside. Relief washed over me so strong my legs felt weak. Kicked at the grate. It was flimsy, rusted through in places. It gave way easily, falling outwards with a clang that sounded deafening in the quiet woods. I tumbled out after it, landing awkwardly on damp earth and dead leaves. Scrambled to my feet, breathing in the clean, cold night air. I was out. Free. I ran. Made it home. Showered for an hour, trying to scrub the feeling of that place off me, the smell out of my nose. Never told my mates what really happened. Just said the place was boring, structurally unsafe, made up some story. But I couldn't forget it. Couldn't forget the humming, the scratching, the gurgle. Subject Alpha. Sometimes, late at night, I think I can still smell that ammonia-sweet rot. And I kept checking the local news, expecting something. It's been 6 months. The nightmares haven't stopped. But that's not the worst part. A few weeks ago, I started noticing changes. A weird rash on my arm where I scraped it crawling through the vents. It doesn't hurt, but it looks wrong, almost geometric. Then there are the headaches behind my eyes, coupled with this faint, high-pitched ringing, almost like that frequency I played, but internal now. And the hunger. I'm constantly starving, craving things I never used to eat, raw meat mostly.